All right. Thanks, everybody. And John, good to see you. I'm going to stay off camera for a little while until I get Lily a little settled, and then we'll see how it goes. But thanks, everybody, for joining. And Jay, good to see you. Glad that you could join us. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight, and so I'm going to call us to order at 6:02, and we'll do a quick roll call, and then we'll review the agenda. Michael Pomykowski.
Here.
Kevin Thusius, not here. John Brandt.
I'm here.
And Steve is not here tonight. And I think that's all of us. So with that, here's what we have for tonight. We have, and hi, Brian, it's so good to meet you. I'm so glad that you're here tonight. We don't have anybody for public comment, right? I would imagine Jay's not for public comment. Is there anybody here that I'm not seeing? And assuming not, then we'll move past that into general business. So general business tonight consists of our committee member report outs and updates. We will review and possibly approve our March 9th Sustainability Committee meeting minutes. And we will bring in Jay Langfeld, president of the village board, to talk about a request that he has for the Sustainability Committee to do some research. And then we'll continue discussion of implementation of the sustainability plan that conversation that we've been having now for the last month or two. And we'll wrap up. And I am going to try to have us wrapped up by 7 o'clock tonight again. As being on childcare tonight, I'm going to see how close to bedtime I can keep us. So thanks again for your grace, and we'll just see how quickly we can move through things. Moving on to general business, since we don't have any public comment, do we have any committee member report outs or updates for things that don't already appear on the agenda, but folks need to share?
The only one that I have, I already shared with everybody, but it was a very interesting conversation I had Saturday afternoon with one of the staff members of the, now I have to get it right, Wisconsin Council of Municipalities, who is very interested in our No Mow May. And she posted the picture on Facebook. She put some, most of our verbiage from the website on their Facebook page, a couple links, and it's been a really interesting conversation to follow. For the most part, everybody that has commented has been, that's really cool. It's good to see. And there's even been the occasional, how can we do this? So.
Hey, that's great, John. I'm so glad that just kind of happened, because they were walking past your yard, right?
They had just finished the Table Bluff segment of the Ice Age Trail, and they were heading down for ice cream.
That's so great. Thanks, John. Michael, did you also have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that looks like this is gonna be my last meeting where I'll be a member of this committee. I think I'm getting moved off of it.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So that's what it looks like. Those positions will be approved at the April village board meeting. So it still might drop in occasionally, see what you guys are doing.
Michael,
so where are you going to go?
I think I'm being moved to the finance committee.
That sounds not nearly as much fun.
That's not nearly as much fun. I guarantee you they don't have cookies when they meet in person like we do.
Yeah, I might have to attend some of the meetings.
Now, Michael, I know that Kevin, when he was moved off in his board capacity, he still continued to serve. Is that something that you even have the ability to do, or just you don't have
No.
the capacity?
I don't know. I never even thought I could be just put on as a citizen member. But I don't know.
Well-
Unless the citizen spots are full or however that works or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either.
There'd have to be a spot open, and I believe everybody wanted to be re-upped for another year. So unless someone leaves, we can only fill them with spots, and that's what happened with Kevin.
So I didn't know we had a limited number of spots, Jay.
Well, yeah, you kind of do. When we made this a formal, once you go formal, there's rules we kind of have to follow, and that was how it was defined. And that's why I had to call you, because technically by ordinance, the village president has to appoint the chairperson. And I know you guys last year took a vote. So I'm trying to, because it's a formal committee now, we kind of have to follow the ordinance.
Well, but we aren't a formal committee yet. We're
No, not yet.
Well, you are, because we made you an ad hoc committee of the board before you were what would be called just a citizens group. There was no tie to the village board, formal one. As soon as we made that, then it became, that's why I can appoint people, trustee to that
I
position.
see.
You didn't have
I
that
see.
before. So we took.
That's the formality. I got it.
Yeah, and then I talked to Melissa already. It's, we're looking to actually build this into a regular committee. By next year at this time, it'll be a regular committee where people will have seats, and we'll spread it out, but there'll be 3-year terms, and the trustee will, whoever's appointed will be the chairperson. So that's kind of the evolution of how committees are done.
So to kind of answer your question, Melissa, I'm still thinking I'm gonna be attending meetings and what capacity we'll see, how my time allows, but I could possibly donate some time not being an official member of the committee to do things if need be.
Okay. Wow, Michael, we're gonna miss you.
Thank you.
We are.
I don't know how to move on from there, so I'm just gonna give that a minute. Because Michael's been with us since the inception of the committee. So so I just really appreciate. I'm kind of just trying to think through this.
Well,
Yeah.
you're gonna get
Okay.
Andy will be your trustee. So, and he's very much into sustainability. So I think it's gonna be a good match for him.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any other announcements or updates from committee members?
Actually, a question clarification. So once we become a formal committee with a standing committee, then the members like me have 3-year terms and then I'm done.
No, what it is,
Oh, okay.
the first year, what we'll do is, you don't want the whole committee ending at their terms at the same year. So when you first form a committee, there'll be, 1 or 2 people for a 1-year term. Then it'll be a 2-year and a 3-year. And then as they get renewed, everybody goes for 3 years. So next year, you'll have someone's term that'll end in 2024. You'll have 1 or 2 people in 2025, someone in 2026. So you've always got consistency on your committee.
Okay,
Right now, how it is when we pass this, everybody had a 1-year term.
got it.
So you'll see come end of this month, in that under sustainability, everybody's being reappointed for a 1-year term, but next year we'll spread it out. And then then you'll have a choice to, if you want to stay, that's fine. Then you can re-up as much as you want.
Okay, so we don't have term limits.
No.
No, there's no, No, there's no term limits.
I feel rather attached to this committee, so I was just wondering.
No, and how it works is for citizen committee members, I make the appointment, then the board confirms them.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
how citizen committees are done.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, and good clarifying question, John. Thanks for that. And Jay, glad that you're here to provide that that information. Any other report outs or updates? Okay. Then next up on the agenda is approving the March 9th minutes. Now, Brian, I don't think I've seen the minutes come through, and I'm wondering if they weren't in the packet, and I'm wondering if they were sent out separately by Mike, or maybe I just missed them. Did anybody else get them?
No, and I can speak to that. I checked with Mike and I asked, I did not have any saved version on the computer that I could access. And when I spoke with him about it, he said he just had his notes, but he didn't have a final typed up version. So he asked that he could submit that for the next meeting to be approved.
Okay, then that's good, because I was about to ask somebody to make a motion, but I thought, you know what? Maybe nobody's seen them and it's not just me. Okay, great. Then we will we'll table that and we'll put that on the agenda for next month. Next up is discussion of the request from Jay Langfeld regarding the research for a future village hall / police station. And Jay, can I turn it over to you to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Everybody's seen the memo, so I'm not gonna reread it to you. Basically what we're looking for, this is going to be a big project for the village, and I would like to get all the committees involved in it with their expertise. And clearly the sustainability is a key factor when you put up new buildings and develop the lot where this is going to be. So that's kind of in a nutshell. We're looking at building a 15,000 square foot building. You figured it'll have a basement, top floor. I'm thinking the footprint's going to be about 7,500 square feet, just to give you a kind of an idea. So there's a number of areas, and these all came up about 4 or 5 years ago. I was in charge of building the Midtown Police Station for the Madison Police Department. Clearly with Madison, they have a full-time staff for sustainability. So I wouldn't consider myself even close to an expert in what needs to happen in this, but I probably have enough information just to be dangerous. So I kind of threw out some things that I know we worked on. I'm thinking Focus on Energy still has a rebate program for building buildings. For my building, I ended up getting $2,000 rebate for the design part of it and $18,000 for construction. And we hit Bindle 2, and I knew there were 3 bundles that you could fall into. I really don't know how we got to 2 and how far off we were 3 and how much more money we would have got if we were in 3, or how much less money we would have got if we were in 1. It's just something that I think we need as policymakers and as we move forward to get a little bit of an understanding on how they set up that rebate, if it's similar, and what are the differences. And then the other one was LEED. Madison requires buildings to be certified at the silver level. And there's 2 things that really jumped out on me. One, it was extremely expensive to get the LEED. I'm guessing I spent anywhere from $65,000 to $80,000 to get the LEED certification. Now I had to take down a building and a house, so clearly that played a role in reusing those products and stuff like that. But a lot of communities, and I even tried to convince the city that I'm not really sure the benefit of certified versus just being in compliant. I could have done a lot of things with that $80,000, but that's something I would like you guys to look at the pros and cons of that. And then, they have different levels. Madison, like I said, required silver. We were at silver, but then I looked at the score sheet and I thought they shorted us some points. And one of the areas that was worth quite a few points were how many businesses, church, buildings like that, or organizations are within walking distance. And for that, it'd be a quarter of a mile. And they didn't think we met it. And I was pretty sure we did. So I went out and documented all the businesses, the churches, the offices, and I ended up getting 14 more points with that. And then it threw us into the gold level. So, it's that kind of stuff that I'd be looking at for leads. I'd be looking at those two things. And then the third one I have is solar. Again, I put solar panels up on the roof of the station, but I know at our East District, they have the big pillars with the big solar panels that follow the sun. You see those, and then obviously the solar farms are using more the ground one. So I'm not really sure if there's a big difference on how much electricity is put out by those, or if we would even want to have the large panels on a site that could be seen by Xander Park or something like that. It's something just to look at. What are the pros and cons of that, and how much energy? And then obviously HVAC, I was involved in a lot of discussions with that, with the city and the actual builders. And boy, there's a lot of differences of opinion on what you should use for the different systems for efficiency, so I'd kind of like to know what's happening right now, even though it's only been 4 or 5 years. I'm sure there's a lot of changes going on. It seems like sustainability has really picked up a lot of momentum, and I think that is really a key thing that everybody's looking at. So I'm guessing there's a lot of new inventions and techniques and gadgets out there that's been developed in the last 4 or 5 years. And then any other sustainability ideas that your group have and would want to look into. And what I'm looking for is you guys to kind of be the subject matter experts, or have somebody that is that to help us make some decisions as we move forward in this process. I'm not looking at for recommendations. And the reason that is there's going to be a lot of groups coming up with stuff, and I don't want to pit one recommendation after another. I would like the subcommittee to just take all the information in and then try to take all the pieces and put the puzzle together so we have a real good project that we all can be comfortable with and proud of. So that's why I'm not looking for recommendations. I'm just looking for that information and those subject matter experts. So that's kind of a quick summary.
Okay. So the board doesn't have any preconceived ideas or desire to be LEED certified gold.
No, we don't. I could not find anything in our ordinance that required that.
Okay.
I think, we've always got to balance the cost, right? And I think, the city decided to go with silver, but again, there's a lot of communities that just they would have it in their ordinance that it has to be silver LEED compliant versus certified. The cost of certification is the documentation that you have to pay for. It's just incredible. But again, I'm open. I just know that's what it ran me. My project, the total project was about, I would say 10 million bucks. Construction was about 7.5. I spent about 1.5 million for the property. and another 150,000 to knock down the church and home. So mine is probably a little bit more complicated than what we had here, but it's something we should look at, what
Okay.
we estimate. And when you get bids from architects and construction companies, they have line item for lead documentation. I mean, they actually have that as a line item, at least ours did.
Jay, just a couple more clarifying questions.
Sure.
Is the expectation that the new Village Hall Police Department will be on the same location? Or
Oh, no, that's
okay.
okay. I should have started with that. Right now, our first choice would be the empty lot next to the fire station, 1601 Bourbon
Okay.
Road.
Okay.
We have offer on that, and right now it's being appraised. So that has gone through the village board as the first choice, and to put the offer in. So that would be our second choice, would be the part of the 14 acres that we own across from the middle school to the east of Bear Park, next to the Viridian development.
Yep.
No, we would be most likely selling the current location. We've already had one developer have some interest in that.
Okay. All right. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And then another clarifying question. You talked about you wanting us to look into focus on energy, lead, solar, HVAC, and then you said any other ideas, but then you
Yeah.
also said you don't want recommendations. So I just want to make sure when you're saying ideas but not recommendations, how should we be thinking about that?
Well, let's say I'm trying to think of another sustainability thing that I have that isn't. Let's say,
Windmills. Should we put a windmill on top of it?
okay, let's say you want to look into wind. So what you would do is say, here are the advantages of wind. Here are some options that we believe could be used in this project. So instead of saying we recommend that you put up a 6 diameter windmill, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, hey, if wind is an idea, yeah, I'm all for how does it work? And what would be some options of implementing wind power into this project?
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And then I did have, I think, one more question within, because as we explore, there are some things that are going to be related to these things, but aren't necessarily the 4 that you listed. So in particular, I'm curious about like electrification, and at some point in the sustainability committee and our plan, we've recommended that the village explore things like hybrid or electric vehicles, and if we wanted to suggest or include the idea of electric vehicle charging station, where would that just come maybe as a private citizen, or how out of the bounds do you want to keep any of our ideas pretty close to these 4 topics that you've listed? Focus on energy, lead, solar, HVAC.
No, actually, that's a great one for under 5 other sustainability ideas. I clearly think we should have a charging station there. And I think it wouldn't be bad if the building is designed where there's underground parking, to have a charging station. Absolutely. Or at least have it roughed in.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's what I did
kind
at Midtown.
Cool.
We did roughing in for our parking area.
Okay. Michael, John, do you have anything you want to ask Jay?
Yeah, I kind of had, I mean, you want like subject matter experts on this. Now, I've never built a building, but you talk about HVAC systems and people becoming experts in that. How much information does like the architect provide in terms of HVAC systems? Like, does he say, I can do 4 different ones? Like, how far along in that process?
No, what I would be looking for, not for you to be picking out the actual system, I would be looking at, do we want to use hot water? Do you want radiant heat? Forced air? And what's where you put the pipes way underground and
Geothermal.
yeah. Those are the things that I'm talking about, not actually getting into the detail of saying buy this model or anything. What I'm looking at is what are the benefits of these different types or systems and compare the cost. That's what I would be really looking at. Not that you have to be an expert in HVACs, but it'd be nice for me to ask, okay, what's the difference between, using forced air versus a boiler system? What are the advantages of that?
Sure. I guess my question, though, to continue with that is that if as you start to design the building and you know what shape it's coming in, I mean, would modern design software and techniques, you would be allowed to, let's install a forced air system and you could run a simulation on how much energy it's going to take, and then you could just rough inside of the architectural drawing a radiant heat system, and then you just run the simulation of what it's going to, like what it would cost to run that system, rather than on an average 7,500 square foot building, not knowing shape, contour, this, that. I mean, some of these simulation softwares can get pretty in depth and their modeling can become very intricate.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think, first of all, that is so far down the road. What I want is the general information. So I think we've named 3 or 4 different types of heating. There's got to be all kinds of literature out there on overall, here are the pros and cons of each one of those. That's what I'm looking for, just to narrow it in a little bit.
Okay.
And I understand the size of the building, how it's set up is all we're not looking at that right now. I mean, if thermal is 10 times as much as radiant, we're probably not going to look at that because the cost benefit might not be there. I don't know. But those are the things I'm kind of looking at for your committee to look at and then report back to the subcommittee. That, hey, these are some of the options out there. These are the ones this committee has looked into, then here are the pros and cons to it.
Right. And even though he said, Melissa, you were concerned about recommendations, he says other ideas, it could just be other ideas that the committee has considered, and you just list them. And whether or not those are recommendations or other ideas, you're not recommending them, but here are other ideas you should consider. However you want to phrase it.
Yeah, I'll try not to make recommendations, but it's definitely part of our duty.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to do is I don't want people hung up on this, but you can understand where I'm coming from. We're going to have 4 or 5 other committees given ideas, and there's naturally going to be conflict between them. And I don't want the committee to have to be pitting one committee against the other. We're all in this together. These are the different pieces. We got to piece them together. So like I say, don't get so hung up on the recommendation. What I don't want though is, here's the heat that I think the HVAC system you should have, and only give the reasons why and not give the cons or why that was picked over the other system.
Right. You want the whole comparative look at this and this and this. And then the committee doesn't recommend one. It says, here you go, here's all this stuff.
Right. Yes.
All right.
And like I say, 5 is wide open. I think you hit a couple right now, wind and definitely charging stations. The way we're going with where cars are, we'd be crazy not to have them.
Yeah, great.
And you're right. If the village is going to go in that direction too, we have to be able to charge those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a real good one. If I would have thought of that, that would have been number 5.
Well, I'm glad number 5 is what it is, because it gives us this nice umbrella to give you
Yeah.
lots of ideas.
Yeah.
That's good. Jay, this
Yeah.
is, I think this is great. And I'm really excited that we have this opportunity to provide some information. It's great because we just, Village just adopted the sustainability plan. And so we can try to weave in some of these things that the plan includes into this next, this new building. So very exciting to have that opportunity to wed these two things. Michael, John, any other last questions or clarifying? Yep. Clarifying questions.
Just one more comment that I want to make. I know this is a lot of work for your committee. So if you get to where you think, for example, if you don't want to do the cost analysis or something, we can refer those to the finance committee and they can help with some of this.
Yeah, we know a guy.
Huh? Yeah, you have an inside. So I just want to throw that out, that there's other, if it gets too much, let me know and we can try to take some of this off your plate, because this is pretty big. Like I say, I sat in hours and hours worth of meetings, and holy man, just listening to this, it's pretty complicated.
I think it'll be
All
fun.
right. Good. Great. Good. Okay. Well, Jay, anything else?
Nope, I'll let you do the rest of your meeting, then I'll take off then. All right. And
All right,
thank
and
you
you're
again.
welcome to
Really
stay.
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
So our next item is discussion and implementation of our sustainability plan priorities. And I think what would be easiest is maybe I'll share my screen and I can pull that plan up if folks just give me a couple of minutes to grab it. Then I can share my screen. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, hey, Brian, when you have a second, can you enable screen sharing?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my phone was going off back there. I forgot to mute that. See on this one. You might have to help me with where that's hidden on
Zoom.
Yeah.
I think if you go to share screen on the bottom, then if you click on that, I think that there's a window that says, or maybe it's participants.
Here, let's try that. Did that just?
Yep, you got it.
Got it.
All right. So on a previous call, we decided that we try to take these in groups of 5. And then on our very first opportunity, I think we only got to the second one because each of these takes longer than we thought. So I think what we'll do is just continue to try to work from where we were. And actually, now that I think about it, Kevin had also created that spreadsheet, which is probably the better thing for me to share. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm going to pull that spreadsheet up that Kevin made, and because that's actually the tracking. There we go. All right, everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. We created, Brian, just so that you know, this sustainability plan was passed in the fall. We included 25 priorities, and now we're going through to figure out how do we move each of these forward, how do we implement them, and we're going in order of just how they were listed in the plan, which was by priority. So I don't know that there's anything that we can do on this first priority, which is around developing a solar farm. Kevin was kind of is going to try to bottom line this. And Brian, now that you are here and we can work with you, we'll try to figure out how to move this piece, continue to move this piece forward. It's been a long conversation. You know, there's been a long process, and we're sort of back to square one, but there's a lot of interest in figuring out how can we bring in solar power to the village, particularly for village operations. So Kevin's going to bottom line that one. And since he's not here, and Brian, you're new to the job, I think we're just going to skip over that one and come back to that at on a future call.
Hey,
The
Melissa,
second, yeah.
I asked Brian one quick question. I didn't look it up, but do you know the status of what's going on with the Sundance development, Brian?
So we're apparently going to have a meeting soon to talk about that. Jay just met with the developer, or the I don't know if it's a partner arrangement over there, and they did give us a preliminary updated version of like what they're thinking about doing. So I think we're going to have a discussion. It's been kind of sent off to be shared with the village engineer for just kind of feedback at this point, and then try to figure out what next steps we might have to take in seeing if this is something that they want to bring forward and actually, you know, move to the development phase with.
So see, this is what I hadn't looked up. I know the village board had extended their preliminary plat extension for 6 months. Has that expired?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I really don't have an answer for you on that one. I don't know when that initially started.
Well, yeah, it initially was approved in, say, I'd have to go back and look. It was approved in February 2019, but I know at one point the village board extended that preliminary plat for some amount of time, and now it being April, oh, I don't know, maybe they're still, yeah, I don't know, I have to go look at that document. Maybe their preliminary plat is still valid. I wasn't sure when that extension was or when it started. Okay, I just wasn't sure if you knew or not.
No, I do not have an answer for you on that one, Michael. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Maybe it's still valid until June. I don't know. I should have looked. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Michael, are you asking where's Sundance? What's the connection? I must be missing something.
Well, because the connection is Sundance is the development on the top of brewery, and
okay,
it's about I don't know, I want to say 70 to 100 acres of pretty flat farmland up there. And that was at one time, I was like, if Sundance doesn't happen, you could drop a 20 megawatt solar farm up there pretty easily. And it's right outside the village, and you could easily power the whole thing. And that's basically why that was just an idea. And Kevin in our last meeting spoke about lands north of the village. So this development has had 400 million issues with it, and did it not transpire, and the developer who owns the land want to sell it. Hey,
yeah,
great idea for what to do with it.
Yeah,
Like what I'm thinking. And
yeah,
I kind of talked about this a long time ago, but we're waiting for the 3-year expiration, and we gave an extension, and it's just been bouncing around the back of my head because I'm like, I don't remember how long we extended it for.
okay, that's helpful. And that's the one, I mean, if it's built, it's going to have potential flooding issues for folks down here on Brewery where I live.
I would think if you put a bunch of concrete on the top of a hill and you live at the bottom of it, yeah, you might get some water.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. And
Well,
so
I'm looking forward to that one then, because I'm just downstream from Melissa.
Yep.
No.
So Brian, your response was you just don't know where that is right now.
They had
extension.
a discussion. I know Jay just recently met with them, and they gave the village a kind of updated proposal of sorts of what they're looking at with the land, but there's nothing definitive, and I think it was given more as an opportunity for the village to kind of look at it from an engineering standpoint and some of the other consideration standpoints before we have a meeting to formally discuss, you know, what give them the feedback and what our concerns are, and then kind of start the discussion phase of where things can go if it does go, in fact, go forward from here.
Yeah, it
Okay.
sounds like the preliminary plat is still valid then. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, we'll just continue to look for opportunities to influence and move the solar farm forward. Maybe Sundance is one of those opportunities, but when Kevin rejoins, maybe he'll have an update. And it sounds like Kevin is committed to working with you, Brian, to try to move that forward a little bit. So
Okay.
you can expect him to reach out. The next priority, which is actually the priority that we spent a lot of time talking about on during our last meeting, is this priority around urban agriculture and increasing access to urban agriculture in the village, and updating ordinances to allow that. And so the small update that I'll give is that Andy, Trustee Hartman, who will be joining our committee starting next month, has advocated to Plan Commission a series of updates that he's recommending to our village ordinances that would enable more urban agriculture, particularly around chickens and ducks and goats. And that presentation happened in March, but then he also gave a subsequent presentation or spoke briefly at a Plan Commission meeting earlier this month, I think on April 4th. And it sounds like there is willingness to allow ducks, include ducks within what's currently known as like the chicken and fowl ordinance. And so there's an interest and willingness to allow ducks. Goats are a big question mark, and Jay Langfeld has, in that meeting, he agreed to do his own research to see what other towns and cities allow goats within their limits, the city limits, and see how those, you know, how those laws are constructed, or, you know, what those ordinances look like. And so big question mark about goats, but much more interest around chickens and ducks. On our last call, I volunteered to draft some kind of letter of, you know, support, laying out our recommendations from the Sustainability Committee. As I admitted a couple of weeks ago, I was way behind and had not gotten to that point yet. But I also think that based on the conversation happening within Plan, that it's okay that it's taking that we're where we are, because I don't think that a letter would have, I think it's, you know, that conversation is going to be ongoing. So I endeavored to get something out here in the next couple of weeks, but I think it's okay that it didn't get to Plan Commission for their April meeting. Michael, you were at that meeting too. Do you want to add anything?
No, that's pretty much it. It kind of sounds like they're looking to go for 6 chickens. Duck sounded like might be included in that amount, and yeah, the goats thing didn't really seem like there was a whole lot of support there. Strangely,
okay, we'll get rid of the pet goats.
Not yet. You don't have to yet.
Something that I didn't mail you, Melissa, when I had emailed you about doing research on this and I hadn't done anything, strangely enough, I get some emails from Middleton because I subscribe to a few of their listserv things, and they are actually updating their chicken ordinance as well. And I went out and downloaded a documentation, and somebody there had already done a comparison of a bunch of different communities around the Madison area with what their chicken ordinances allow. I can find that.
Yeah.
So I was just like, wow, we don't have to go look at anything. It really,
thanks, Michael. That'd be great.
Yeah, and it really wasn't, you know, it wasn't like a bunch of brilliant ideas. It was just like 6, and some of them, you know, how they pay their fees, but it was just kind of gave a baseline for that, you know, without actually going out and downloading the ordinances. But they had to have like a special meeting of their common council to work through these issues. It was kind of crazy, and in Middleton got their chicken thing. So they're kind of hashing it around a little bit right now as well.
Okay, that's really good to know. I thought that they had a much more open policy about chickens. Like I thought that they didn't really have any requirements around it, but I think I got my wires crossed because I think you shared with me on our last call that they're actually fairly restrictive.
Yeah,
Is that
maybe
right?
I don't know. Maybe they did have a lax one and they had chickens running everywhere and they're like, we need to do something about this. I mean, I don't know. That's why they're like
Yeah.
6 chickens. That's it. Maybe they have to do millions of them, you know.
Well, I'd still like to make good on my promise to draft a letter that would go to Plan Commission that has sustainability committee recommendations around. I think we should probably include ducks. I know that Kevin has mentioned this on a past sustainability committee call as well. And so I think that, oh, and Kevin was on that Plan Commission call as well. So that was interesting. He heard that presentation as well. So I still will commit to drafting a letter and then sharing it with sustainability committee members and getting that out to Plan Commission before their next meeting. Any other thoughts or questions on that?
No.
Okay, on the urban ag. Michael, I want to skip around. I want to skip to the number 5 because you did share some research with us, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the priority number 5 and the research that you found and any recommendations that you'd like to make if you have any.
Oh, sure. Okay, well, this was just a bunch of stuff that I had bouncing around in my head concerning our current light ordinance. Well, about a year ago, I wrote our streetlight policy, and inside of that policy, the recommendation or the policy requires 2,700K or less LEDs be used as streetlights because the current technology of the high pressure sodium, the amber, that's a lot of places basically is being phased out, and even the fixtures are now discontinued and you can't even really find them on vendors' websites anymore. So to that end, I just kind of threw together this document. I mean, I can go through it real quick. I included, well, this was the stuff that I wrote. I included our sample, or not our sample, this is our existing light ordinance, which, it gets kind of, in some places it gets very exact when it starts talking about maximum illumination of 25-foot candles. I mean, these are really only used if you actually have a photometric of the property, which most of the time on larger site plans we definitely will. And so for the most part, as I say up top, the things that are really repeated all the time are the fully shielded, full cutoff, the half-foot candle, the property line, the maximum height of fixtures of 16 feet, and prohibit of flashing, flickering lights. I mean, just those alone are very powerful requirements inside of our ordinance. The one place that it is lacking is the requirement of the color of the light or the hue, which with the advent of LEDs being up to 5,000K, which is bright lights, this is where if you're trying to control lighting to reduce light pollution, wildlife, etc. There was a document that I included that came from the International Dark Sky Association that talked about that. It was a 4-page document, kind of does the best in terms of explaining it. I could have put eons and eons of pages in here about this because there's articles and other things written, but pretty much the gist is they have that Kelvin temperature chart in there of lighting, where you can see it's on page 7, where it goes into the blue light is bad. Basically, blue light is required to make a white light, and it's the bright light whites that are the enemy because they contain the blue light, which leads to, more light pollution, melatonin decreases, so people can't sleep, affecting wildlife. They're figuring out that it affects a lot of other things. And on the scale, you can see that the high pressure sodium lights are way down here at 2200 K, which are generally the street lights that exist now. They do contain some blue light, as a little bit of mercury is put in there to get that tonality. Without that, it would be very monochromatic. But that's kind of the swing. So to continue along that, I also included 2 pictures that I took as examples. Go down to page 10 and 11. This is the back of the insurance building taken from Xander Park looking toward Bourbon. So I'm looking over the creek. The creek is in front of me and the building is there. As you can see here, now I'm no like expert photographer. I'm not sure this is really what it looked like. I mean, I'm just there kind of flipping the timing on the shutter and hoping I have the f-stop right, but I just took it just to demonstrate. Over here on the, if you look on the right side, you can see the high pressure sodium streetlights, how they're amber. In the middle, the building is whiter than that. And over to the far left, you'll notice the 2 lights that are on the back of the building next to it. And this basically demonstrates how the 2 lights over to the left, I suspect, are 5000 K. You can see how they're a much whiter white. In the middle, the insurance building was done at 3000 K, and the high pressure sodiums are down at 2200. It doesn't look, I mean, you can see the differentiation when you're there. It's much more striking. Also, the 2 fixtures that are the 5000 K are not shielded at all. If you walk over in that park, especially right now before the foliage comes out, those 2 lights will throw so far that you can see your shadow as you walk through Xander because they aren't shielded. They're throwing that much light over. This building went to 3000 K because Bill, our previous administrator, I had been inquiring about the lighting on it, and initially they wanted to do it in 5000 K is what the spec came back as. And I just talking to Bill was like, it isn't our ordinance, but would they be willing to go down to 3000 K just because that's what we hope our ordinance moves to at some time? And he contacted them and they had no issue with doing that. Granted, the fixtures hadn't been ordered or anything, but they were like, yeah, that sounds fine. So it's just a great example of a juxtaposition of 2 different lighting temperatures inside the village right now. And then the final picture is one of an apartment building. This is taken up from this is Ludden, looking at the apartment buildings from way up at the Latitude Graphics parking lot looking over. The building there that's in the middle, they retrofitted a lot of these fixtures, like looking straight on, those very bright white ones are also not shielded and they're 5000 K. And you can just see how that balance with just the intensity, how it illuminates that side of the apartment. You can even see, you can see some throw up onto these trees. Now, this is an example where not having foliage as the trees, you can't see how much light is actually being bounced up. When those trees fill in with leaves, the whole entire backside of that treescape becomes inundated with light. These were just examples that and then you can see clearly the road, how the high pressure sodium amber lighting looks. I mean, like I say, is this exactly how it looked? I don't know how to make a camera work so that it exactly looks like what's in my eye. So I just kind of sit there and just fiddle with the buttons, and this is kind of what comes out.
Do you know what the lights are that we put on Main Street a couple of years back?
Their temperature, I believe, are 4000 K. I once sent, I think they are. I sent an email to Matt, who was our administrator many administrators ago, when I first started getting interested in this in 2015, and he didn't provide a document that actually gave me the temperature reading of it, but I've deduced that they're 4000 K because if anybody really wants a different lighting thing, go and stand in the Quick Trip parking lot. The Quick Trip parking lot is lit up with 5000 K, if not more lights. The Main Street lights, you can tell, are not as white, and they're at the intersection of Highway P and Church Street and 14. The LEDs that the Wisconsin DOT installed, I believe, are 3000 K. You can clearly see this like reduction in white level just by standing in the Quick Trip parking lot. Like, it's crazy. So that's why I think that those are 4000 K, John.
The reason I ask is we have blackout curtains on the front of our house.
Yeah.
Because we have one that if I look out my window right now, it's at face level. And we hate it.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, and I really don't think there are that many people up and down Main Street that have 2-story houses that like them.
I would imagine. So even though it's at face level, those are shielded pretty well. The lighting elements are sunk about 3 inches inside of the dome, but you can still see the fixture part, like the things emitting the light, or is it just all the light?
If we had our windows open, we could read at night.
Yeah. What's tough about that though is that inside of our lighting ordinance, the Highway 14 lighting was chosen way back probably in 2014, and it has to be approved by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation.
Oh no, I understand. I'm just kind of giving you this is, you know, what it's like living with lights like that.
Oh,
they're a pain.
Oh, I
am totally on board with everything that you are saying about this, Michael. No.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I won't talk forever. I know you wanted to be off at 7. So the first thing is really the temperature control. Then I wrote about other things. I mean, I done a lot of research, and then for this weekend, I was like, I want to go to like where this all started. And I went and started reading the lighting ordinances in Flagstaff in Tucson, Arizona, because that's where the Dark Sky Association was founded, because they have some observatories very close to those cities. And, you know, our light ordinance is 2 pages. Theirs are like 14 and 17 pages long. They divide the city into zones where you can only have so much light. They like measure the lumens per acre. Like, they record every single fixture practically. Like, it is like way intense. I'm not looking to do anything like that. I mean, that's like would be like craziness. So you just kind of hit like the big things. And, you know, like encouraging parking lot lighting to be extinguished when not in use, or even requiring it. I mean, right now, the Piggly Wiggly and Walgreens turn off their lights at night just because the lights aren't used. Saves energy. I know the back of St. Francis, they turn theirs off. They only leave one on. There are other opportunities for just all the advantages that I spoke about. I even talk about curfews on signs. And one of the things that comes up in a lot of my research is electronic variable message signs. Now that they're all becoming LED and their intensity can be pretty big, I haven't read a very good ordinance on how to limit that. It sounded like Tucson was in the process of updating theirs, but it hadn't been approved. And I don't know, just as an example, if you drive down Main Street and you see Culver's, they just recently put in an electronic variable message sign that on a cloudy day like today, you go down there, it is the brightest thing up and down that road. Like, it is outshining the street lights or the stop lights. I mean, it is I think they probably have it like set at max. I mean, I don't know. But those are just in at night, but they're kind, like they turn it off at like 11 or 10 at night. Like, it isn't on all night. And John, you speaking of that, the only reason why I bring that up is because along Main Street, since it's our business district, if we start to approve a lot of electronic variable message signs, you might even start to get horizontal light coming into your house, and not just and so your Main Street
flashy lights.
Yeah, Main Street could turn into this cornucopia of changing electronic variables, especially if they're very bright, and there are numerous number of them. So this is the stuff that like I'm looking into. I didn't write anything into formal ordinance, but I just kind of wanted to present ideas.
Yeah, this is great, Michael. And I'm wondering, so I'd like to take this into our next meeting
Definitely.
and have the conversation, bring Steve and Kevin into the conversation. And I'm wondering if, even though you won't be on our committee anymore, would you consider, can you join us again next month so that we can continue to talk through this and talk through what we think the committee should get behind in terms of recommendations specifically? So
Yeah,
that's the first question. Can you join us? Okay. And then the second question is, what's the process? The process, as I understand it, based on what you said, is that we would make recommendations to update the lighting ordinance, and that would go through the village board, or would that go through a different committee first?
that would definitely go to the plan commission because
Okay.
they would have to vet it, changing in an ordinance. There'd have to be a public hearing on it. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
and I even kind of spoke to Jay a little bit about it. He's like, well, why is sustainability doing it? Why isn't it coming directly to plan? I'm like, well, it was in our plan.
Mm-hmm.
It deals with energy savings. I don't know, I think Jay's kind of trying to wrap his head around, I'll be honest with you, like what sustainability is, because we had it in our plan to do urban ag, right? And so Andy wanted that, and Jay just sent it straight to the plan commission, and he was just like, well, why would sustainability be involved in that? I'm like, well, sustainability kind of has this environmental aspect to it, but it's also, which I don't think he totally interprets sometimes, or right. I mean, I'm just being honest, because he's talking about making us a whole committee. The question is, what would we do then? Because most of the stuff we're going to do is just going to go to the plan commission. So if you're just going to kick it to plan, then why make us a full committee? I mean, unless it's going to be the research committee and plan, this is all the research that we did, but we don't ever get to make a recommendation, and plan just goes shred, no, and then moves on.
Right.
I think most of the board missed that equity aspect of our mission statement.
Well,
yeah.
Absolutely. See, and you can, I'll be honest with you. I mean, Jay, he's a great president, but I think sometimes he thinks in black and white, and sometimes he only thinks in sometimes dollar signs. Like you can tell, like if you look back at like what he recommended us to do, what is the cost of the lead? How much is an HVAC system going to cost? What's the best solar thing? What's our best return on investment? What is Focus on Energy going to give us back? So at the end, he said, oh, maybe some of this should go to the finance committee. I'm like, probably all of it should go to the finance committee. So like if you're looking for quotes,
if that's what you're looking at,
HVAC systems, and I mean, so that's where, and I agree. I mean, I don't know like what committee gets what bucket. It gets confusing.
I think that's just the nature of, and I think that's the nature of this kind of, of working with committees, and that there will sometimes be overlapping, charges, and that's okay. And I think it is going to be political to some extent, and Jay's going to make determinations around that. So, I'd love us to take on as much as we can, especially when it comes to something that's within our sustainability plan. And this was in our sustainability plan, so I want to continue moving it forward, even if it does end up going to plan commission. I shouldn't say even if it does, it will. Any of our recommendations will go to plan commission on that. But and Michael, even if it's creating a new ordinance, that's probably also going to plan, or is that just okay?
Yeah, even the one that we have is, if ours like included just all it needed was one line, like no lights above 3,500 K, it would almost be like not even need to be altered. It just doesn't have that hue aspect in it. I mean, I don't know, just go out at night and walk around the village. I mean, I ride my bike around at night. That's why I see these things. And then I talk about oh, this whole entire other section, residential lighting reforms. I mean, our light ordinance still talks that fixtures with 100-watt incandescent or left don't need to be shielded. Well, what is that now with LED light bulbs? 100-watt incandescent bulbs don't, I don't even think you can buy them anymore.
They don't exist.
Yeah, exactly. And yet our ordinance talks about its equivalent, but doesn't define the equivalent. It becomes difficult if somebody puts up a 6500K light that puts out the same amount of lumens as a 100-watt incandescent bulb, but it's all very white, bright light. It could penetrate your bedroom much easier, much further, much more annoying, or etc. And then I just talked about motion sensors on houses. I mean, I ride by houses, I'm riding in the street, and like these lights are going off as I go by. I'm like, should that be allowed? I think if they're using them to protect their property, I have every right to be in the right of way without having their lights go off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So this has to be turned more into ordinance. I could even do some of that. I want to do a little bit more research to see, like I want to see if I can find ordinances that already talk about motion lights, and like, just because if I can steal language, and so I need to do, more. I went to the Flagstaff and the other one, and what was kind of upsetting about Flagstaff and Tucson is that neither one of those ordinances had been updated since like 2012. And I'm like, man, there's been such a change in lighting technology. But like I say, and Tucson, like I said, they started Tucson, and like it must be the entire county share the same light ordinance. And they started like request for public comment like over a year ago, and then it just like ended. And I was even thinking about sending an email to one of their staff workers and be like, what happened to this? Where did it go? Or do you have a draft of it? I mean, even if I just get a draft and just see the ideas they're kicking around. But the electronic variable message sign one, that's probably going to fall outside of the purview of this. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that would go in the sign ordinance, or if that would go in the light ordinance, or if that goes into its whole entire different ordinance. I mean, I don't know, because that's kind of where you're skating in two areas. I mean, all I know is that our sign ordinance says that that all signs must comply with the light ordinance, and that is all it says. So maybe it does go in the, I mean, I don't know. I'll work a little bit more on that and figure out like where it needs to go. But I tried, going back to like talking about Jay, I tried to explain to him that because of the aspect of sustainability, dealing with this energy aspect, and just how it touches like every single thing that is done practically, I mean, inside the village, because everything takes energy. Like even like with the farm agriculture, if you're getting tomatoes that are trucked from 500 miles away, I mean, that's just an energy aspect to it. So I don't know really how he frames sustainability yet. And I was like, it really kind of functions under this general environmental energy umbrella. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, what do you think it is? They're just like the solar panel committee? I mean, I mean.
Oh man, yeah, okay.
And that's what I don't know. And so, as soon as Andy came to him with the urban agriculture, it was like, oh, that's an ordinance change. That's plan commission. That's how, that's what went off in his head.
Yeah, okay.
Rather than let sustainability kick around, do a little research. This is our recommendations to the plan commission. This is why.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So that was just, I had a conversation with about a week ago, and I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't know. It was just, it's what was talked about.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like there's some education around that for Jay. And as you said, John, it looks like the whole equity component has gotten like, that's fallen completely off of his radar, that's something that we're thinking about.
Yeah.
So it definitely is beyond just solar, and it's definitely beyond just dollars, the work that we're thinking about.
Right. I know this is off topic. I just want to ask real quick. Are you two still interested in the community garden?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And my next question is like, when should things be planted in that? Like, because I know last year that thing didn't get tilled till like, I think after Memorial Day. And I would really like to get that on Mike's radar earlier because last year I started pretty late in that process.
We're targeting planting somewhere around Memorial Day.
Okay.
Probably for us too, although Michael, if you, because that's just because what we're planting, because
Right.
we're going to do Three Sisters and that doesn't get planted till like totally past any possible frost. But if there are other gardeners, it is right about now that other community gardens in the Madison area are starting to open it up. And if they're tilling for the spring, they're doing spring tilling right now because lots of gardeners want to get, potatoes and radishes and spinach and things early. So if it's more than just us three, you might want to do it earlier.
Yeah, I haven't even put out like advertisements for it. Like I'm like, I need to like get like something at the library, something at the pig. The other woman who did it last year has already contacted me that she was interested, and I know that as it got later, I think she had like her tomato plants planted in smaller things at home, and she was like, when can I get them in the ground? Like she was ready, to move them. Like I don't know if she started them from seed or what, but okay, I just need to start talking to Mike, and because it just kind of seems like we're at the whim of the public works labor when people can do
probably
things or whatever. But I know that if it's okay to get it tilled earlier, it would be better because in like 2 or 3 weeks, they might have so much outside stuff to do, public works that is, that this just gets kicked way down their agenda. Whereas if I start talking about it now with Mike, maybe they'll go and till it next week when they have nothing to do, and then it's already been tilled,
Yeah. One thing too, Michael, is that there are a lot of community gardens in the area that don't do tilling anymore. That and that's because some of them, well, for a couple reasons. One is that they've found that it's better for the soil not to disturb it. It increases soil health. But the other is that there are a lot of community gardens that people have perennials planted and they want to be able to keep them, and so they don't till. So you don't have to. It's not something that that has to be done if it and if it's a matter of like there's still plant debris from the previous garden season, then going forward that could be something that gardeners take care of before they start planting or cleaning out at the end of the year. But just to let you know, tilling is not it's become less and less popular in other community gardens for a few reasons. So
Right.
it's not something we have to do.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. There isn't a whole lot of debris there, but getting it all masticated this year might be good, especially since there was a fair amount of weeds last year because it had sat for so long. Like the other woman who basically had the larger plot, like with my parents, she basically put down the whatever it is, the fabric, because it was there were just so many weeks. She was like, I'm just putting down fabric, and then she got the whole sort of plants, and her plants work great. My dad and I weeded 2 times, and we were like, okay, we're doing fabric next year. It was just because that thing had sat with weeds on it for over that whole COVID year. It was pretty bad. But you're right though about like the tilling. A friend of mine who's a farmer, he was like, if you're going to till that, and you're going to continue to do it, if you till it in the fall, it's better than doing it in the spring, because in the fall, then you till it up and then you get the freeze thaw and your soil will be healthier in the spring, he said, because it gets that over winter mumbo jumbo or whatever. That's just what he was, maybe that's what farmers do. I don't know if on this small scale it matters, but it sounded like that's what he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, soil health, definitely. It could be something. It was my first year last year, just figuring out.
Well, Michael, I'm glad that you're doing it, and I'm excited to be gardening down there. Actually, Chris is going to be doing it more than I am, but I'm excited that that we'll be down there, and so hopefully we have no flooding, and that it's a good gardening year for that space.
We have all the seeds for everything that's going in that garden.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice. It'll
Okay.
be fun.
Need to get some emails out then. Well, at least to Mike, and I don't know, like last year I emailed Bud Bush I have to ask you guys because I don't know who else to ask. Bud Bush gave me the folder of everyone who had done it before, and I think you guys were on that, and I like mass emailed everyone who had done it before. Do I do that again this year, or because nobody
No,
responded, do I just say they didn't respond, so don't try it again, or else it's just pestering them then?
that's what I would. I don't think I would do that, although I don't think that I would mass email. I think I'd put out flyers, you know, see if we can get something in the village newsletter,
Right.
something
yeah.
on the Facebook page, but
Right.
I wouldn't bother emailing those folks, and then just try to, you know, word of mouth. I think, you know, like John and I shared, when we gardened before, the water was such an issue that I think probably most people who did garden there don't want to go back, don't want to try it again, because it was the water, you know, the garden was soaked.
Because of the flooding?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also, was it the year of the flooding that, or was it maybe, I don't remember, because maybe it was the year of the flood.
The year of the flood, I mean, everything was just gone.
Right.
Yeah, I think this was a different year.
But I think 2 years before that, something happened as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think I was talking to Chris Lohman at the library, and she said that place has been like flooded twice, and she was kind of like, after the second time, people were just like, we're done.
Yeah.
And we got done after the first one. I mean, it was easy to be done because there was enough going on in our life that it was hard. We don't have all of that stuff anymore. So it'll be pretty easy, you know, it'll be easier to do, and we're willing to give it a shot and support it again.
Right. Yeah, well, I'll start making these flyers and get them up here pretty quick, but if it's anything like last year, there might only be 3 of us and the other woman who did it last year, because she wanted a plot. And I think she wanted it basically because she basically had half the garden, and she was like, I'd love a gigantic plot like that. And I'm like, well, geez, I could just like limited us to 4 of us and not advertise that we have.
And I don't need a gigantic garden.
Same. Same.
I mean, my dad and I mean, Steve tried to grow some pumpkins without weeding at all, and that didn't work so well. But my dad and I mean, we probably pulled off 25 pumpkins off of there. Now, did any of them get to be big size? Not huge, but I was eating a ton of pumpkin seeds. That's why I was growing them. Just collecting the pumpkin seeds and making them.
That's great. Hey, I'm going to wrap us up here. But Michael, feel free to follow up with us on the community garden thing. If there's anything that I'm going to volunteer John, anything that John can do, just let him know.
Hey, thanks.
That's my favorite thing, is to volunteer other people. But I'm also available if there's anything that I can do to help with the community garden plot, with the community garden piece. And we've actually been talking about unofficial business for a while. I don't know if I should officially adjourn at 7:20. Yeah, anybody want to give me make a motion to adjourn?
Sure. Oh, sorry, Michael beat me.
Okay.
Oh, so
Michael,
my
the motion.
When I can vote.
It's his last vote. Oh my gosh. So sad. Michael, you've been with us since we started this committee. This is just, oh man, what's this committee going to be like without you? Okay, and then John seconded. All right, motion passed to adjourn.
Well, we have to vote.
Yeah, okay. All in favor of adjourning?
Are we gonna have discussion?
Oh my God, can we please end?
Okay, fine. Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, motion carries to adjourn at 7:20. Brian, it was such a pleasure to work with you. Thanks for
Putting up with
joining this
us.
thanks for putting up with us. And
Oh,
Michael,
great.
thank you so much for all of your years of service to this committee. And I am hoping that you will continue to participate and join calls. And I'm also surprised to find out that there's a limit on how many people can be on our committee. That was news to me.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read that. I mean, you have 4 citizens on here and the trustee, maybe that's all a village appointed ad hoc committee has as 5 voting members. I mean, I don't know.
I think it goes back to the original. These are the 4 citizens that want to be on the committee. And here's your trustee who's also on the committee. And that's
Right.
what they approved.
Right.
And they've just never changed from that.
Yeah,
Right.
that might be it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, at least we'll see you next month, right?
Yeah, and I'll most likely be dropping in, seeing what you guys are doing. I mean, it's I like seeing what you guys are working on, and
Yeah.
obviously, so, and I'll lend a hand as time allows, and
Awesome.
yeah, definitely.
Good. Okay,
Cool.
good. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your night and a great rest of your week. And we'll talk again in a few weeks.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys.